Welcome to this second series of international conferences, Positive Synergies on High Abilities and Giftedness in Times of Crisis. I'm Alberto Palicio, member of the ENOL Association since its beginning. It's my honor to introduce María Dolores Palacio Ornia. She's founder of the association, she's a sufferer, and she's president of this association. The talk she's going to share with us is the gifted person distorted by the virus of ignorance. María Dolores is a teacher. She's got a degree in psychology, and her professional work job, her profile, she worked in the CRGID, the Asturian Institute for Youth. She took part in European programs for action, Youth in Action and Erasmus. I know her personally very well, and I think that her talk is going to be based basically in her professional experience as a mother. Loli is my wife. She's mother to our kids, Enol and Marcos. Loli, the floor is yours. Hello from this ENOL Association for Giftedness and High Abilities. I welcome you to this second series of international conferences based on positive synergies on high abilities and giftedness in times of crisis. We're talking about the consequences this year of non-identification or the consequences of identifying just as a mere labeling. Today, we have started this series of conferences. The activity that started on the 16th of June with Eric Garcia Castellano, who will be talking about the distortion experimented based on firstly the non-identification and then when identifying the giftedness just as a mere label. We will also present Mother's Day video that Tina Harlow created and that Linda Silverman sent us, and it's dedicated to gifted kids, mothers, and myself, talking to you about my own experience. I will talk about the gifted person distorted from the virus of ignorance, COVID-19, from a perspective that comes from a mother point of view, as a receiver of questions from other mothers to our association, and as an expert in training for the Principality of Asturias, especially when I was working in Juventus en Acción and Erasmus programs that were based in educating values. Many areas were covered, equality, of course, but from the point of view of inclusive equity. If we always implemented these values, we wouldn't be here talking about these issues. I highlight this part of my professional career because I really loved it, because I always thought equitative equality and inclusion and psychology are are essential elements in education. I am the first one who's an ignorant, the first one to know that I have the virus. I suffered the virus of ignorance. I knew a lot about in theory. I knew a lot, or that's what I thought, but experience and practice showed me otherwise, especially with the comments and explanations that my dear son Elon made to me. I questioned myself, how can it be that I saw something but I didn't see it? We knew something, but you can only understand it when it's measured and explained. Since he was born and all, I saw he was always gifted. It was very obvious. Some other gifted kids are not so obvious, but he was very much advanced in everything. For evolution charts, he was going very fast. In the teenagehood, too, he was always well ahead of the rest. Thousands of things I could tell you. We have great memories, really, of that time. As a baby, he progressed really fast. In his crib, I said, well, if he lowers this protector, he could get anything in the drawers. Maybe in a month, he will start grabbing things. Well, 2 days later, he had everything in his crib, and he was laughing at it because he was looking at my earrings and rings to put them in his mouth, of course, at that time. Well, it's good that I got there on time. Everything was good for him. And Noel had a huge vitality. He had an amazing life. He would wake up, he was full energy. The moment he stepped out of bed until he got back to bed, he was full energy. And I always thought that he fell asleep by accident because he wanted to do everything. He loved animals, he would hug them, he learned to swim very quickly. He liked it all. In kindergarten, they told him he's an amazing kid. He's like, as you would describe it in a book. He was a happy kid, and with his brother too. It was also that the time when he started school. And as I say, I always knew he was gifted. And when he started school, I thought, I'm going to comment. But I found many other mothers where everybody's kids seemed to be gifted. So I then thought maybe, well, it's not that important. And I would implement the model, that moment model, the one developed in 1997, the one I had studied, integration, just trying to make him be just one more. I did hesitate. I was wondering whether he had ADHD, but no, I noticed that when he was interested, he focused very dearly, very highly. Why do I have to go to school? Why do I have to go? He would ask me every day. Well, because we live in a society where you need to go to school, blah, blah, blah. Well, he seemed to understand it, but not long later, he would ask me again, why do I have to go to school? And then as he grew a bit more, he said, they talk about certain things that are not interesting. And I thought that when offering other activities out of school, it would be enough. And I was happy because it happened to be a classroom where everybody had good marks and had good support for their families. And he thought, well, that's great. So he won't be an outstanding person, and he will adapt to his colleagues. Everybody talked very dearly about him. Polite kid, studied well, fine, okay. He had created a fake personality. He was a different person. When Linda Silverman came to Asturias in a congress in Oviedo that we also organized, she said, unfortunately, we teach kids to place masks before they show the way they really are. Schools should put an end to this fake. We should promote these kids to develop in their differences, kids and parents, because it's emotionally devastating to spend 6 hours a day for 13 years of your life where you can't be yourself. These kids just need to be accepted and understood, and when placing them at the same level that the rest of the students, it will just harm everyone. It won't give any benefit to anyone else. Unfortunately, being different in a world where being normal is what is more treasured is terrible. It's a big problem. They don't need to be loved for what they can be. They really need to be loved for what they are and for the way they think. My son Anol, he had a happy life, and he said it. He adapted to be unnoticed. He was very much loved by everyone. He was a good student too. A happy childhood, surrounded by many kids, with an intense social life. And he looked happy. We could feel that he was happy, but when looking at him with his interests, and I asked in different places, and amongst them in a gifted center, a center for gifted people. I asked them, do we have to do anything? And they asked me, but what they would tell me, is he doing fine? And they would tell me, why are you looking for problems where there are none? Well, the problem is that's fake being. He knew very clearly what he wanted. He was always ahead. He surprised me. We bought a computer and suddenly it was all broken down to pieces. God, don't worry, Mom. I will repair it back. I pulled back. He developed a web page with being 9. He was very independent. He was very polite. There was no time you could punish her or tell him off. He was very loving. He was really a treasure. When he was a teenager, I said, "Oh, I should have put more pressure on you like other mothers. Come, Mom. Those kids have no criteria afterwards. You were the best mom in the world." With that smile on his face he always had, and that you had nothing to say after that. And when he was 14, we are observing it because a mom got a label. This mom would label everyone, even the teacher. And there's nothing worse than feeling observed. As Jean-Claude Fassin said, that did him terrible harm, and we couldn't measure that because we thought that he was doing really well. Being observed for a gifted person is terrible, especially for those places where they just want to go unnoticed, such as school. Many gifted people suffer this type of bullying, insults, mobbing when they grow up. And they notice. And this gets even worse when it's the authority who tells them or who observes them, especially in the higher school years, when they often find teachers commenting amongst some teachers, as it happened in the case of Renault. This is like the little duckling, the ugly duckling. That's how they feel. They may look happy, but inside they feel bad. Inside they really feel sad. They feel hurt, always surrounded by friends, lots of activity, always seem to be... Well, the only very few things you could see different was, well, he's just a teenager, you're getting a bit further apart from your parents. Is it time to take a distance? Well, it's teenagehood. Les sentiments de décalage. That's also something we heard during the Congress where Jean-Claude Fassin took part. The feeling of being left aside. Unfortunately, this feeling creates a feeling of being unadjusted with regards to the others when they feel as the ugly duckling, a book written by Christian Andersen, who was also gifted. And this is a feeling that will be mostly felt during teenagehood. And many gifted people feel that they're crazy because something doesn't fit inside, and sometimes they're even misdiagnosed. Well, imagine this, if you're additionally being observed and placing you a label that you don't understand. It really gets them down. Not being different, if they're integrated, being different is not bad as long as you're integrated. But if you're out of place all the time, it's terrible. It's devastating, especially during teenagehood, when you need to identify with your peers. My son wanted to adapt to take study habits. We couldn't understand because he was an excellent student. Now I do. When they come to these ages without any habits, he finished his degree, his high school, but insults continued. We went to the best psychiatrist, and he explained to them that he did not have a mental disorder. It was just that he was very much gifted, and it was during teenagehood, it was a bit more difficult to to adapt. And the problem is not to have a label. The problem is not understanding them and not feeling that you can fit and that you can adapt. He started feeling bad, and maybe having a bit of depression. We went from expert to expert, label after label. He was diagnosed as ADHD patient, and he had to take drugs for that. He was treated for that. But the excess of drugs or medication to which his perfectionist character took him, the low tolerance to frustration, brought him problems. I was tormented, really. I didn't know what was going on with him because he was apparently surrounded by lots of people. The telephone wouldn't stop ringing. We all often thought it's just teenagehood. He suggested me to read Carmen Santiago's book, The Curse of Intelligence, and then I realized that we should measure his IQ. He then suggested me to read the book from Jean-Jules Verne to see from another perspective what was to be gifted. When my son understood his IQ and what it meant to be gifted, he found himself. And I remember he would say, "Mom, I'm happy. I found an answer to my life, an explanation to my life. I know why I'm weird, why I don't fit, why I'm different. I'm not crazy, I'm not mad. I've gone from the ugly duckling to a swan. This doesn't mean to be better or worse than the rest. It's just process faster. It's the last model computer, Formula One car, but we need to know how to use it." He understood, and he made us understand what was going on with him. He understood what it meant, and he saw the root to his bad feelings. It was not knowing himself, and said, "Mom, you need to know this since you're a little kid. Otherwise, you grow feeling always strange, different, out of place. You don't know what's wrong with you." And these are patterns that we see over and over again with the families that an all association receives. Why didn't you identify me at first, when I was a kid? Well, I thought it wasn't important. And he showed me documentaries, documents, literature. He made me see that it was not me, the ignorant one. It's not the same growing up, knowing that you're different, as thinking that you're different, you're weird, you're strange, you're not sane. Because people say different things about you and you believe them because you see yourself that you're different. But had I known that I was just gifted, I would have been immune to these comments. I would have had an explanation. He had found himself, he had found an explanation to his uncomfort, and it was end of 2050. In June, he was planning his summer and his holidays. He was really excited. He was planning his birthday party. That was on the 23rd of June. He was really feeling excited about it. 16th of June 2015, he said, "Mom, this is going to be the last day I will take my medication to focus in studying." No, I won't. He insisted because he couldn't focus, and he just went out of control. You can imagine, I could see destruction images, disintegration in my life, tears, not wanting to know anything about anything, to want to disappear with me. I could only think about my other dear son, and I could only have that image in that storm, that terrible earthquake, and I had the need to go onto that lighthouse and alert the rest. I needed to transmit what I wanted to, what my son had taught me to see. and alert. I had to alert other people, other gifted. I had the urge to create an association, an annul association. Nobody was recommending me to do this, but with the support of my son, of my husband, my father, my sister, and the rest of my family and friends, some thought she's crazy. She's just gone crazy. She lost her son and she's absolutely nuts. What is this giftedness thing? Everybody knows what it is. It's ridiculous. Many people told me, friends, students, colleagues, teachers, they say it's ridiculous. I always know when I have a gifted students and I find support in them and they help me stimulate others. I wasn't very sure. They weren't very sure what I wanted to do, but they always gave me their support. A gifted person also contacted me, and he spoke just like my son, and I was impressed. He said he wanted to contact me. The Dr. Bercher also wanted to contact me because you are Enol's mother. Yes, yes, I'm that ignorant. That was at that time the only thing I could say. He also introduced me to Esther Moreno, and they were sending me emails constantly, and they helped me and stimulated me very much because I would say, how can it be that nobody knows about this? How can it be that in 20 years I never heard about it, never saw anything about it? And well, many people told me I've been here for 30 years and we have to spread the word, we have to inform everyone. I wanted basically that experts would talk about it, that would spread the word. The parents of gifted kids could see that they're experts on this topic and that they would see the topic as my son taught me to see it. Many, I had never heard it in 20 years until Enol explained it to me. So many people are thanking us now because they are helping them understand themselves, see a door, a light at the end of the tunnel, a light in their lives. And I'm very thankful to those experts that are honest and sincere, have always told us, thank you very much. I was diagnosing more than I should have. They're not. They are not sick, they're not ill, they don't have disorders, they're just gifted. And very many told us, thanks to Enol, I saved my son, thanks to the association, I'm happy, or I could help my kids. I thought I was going to do this, I was going to get on the lighthouse, warn once, and that's it. But now, when seeing through all the families that are thanking us for our help, people carry on telling, carry on asking the help they could have to be able to benefit from the positive synergies from the speakers. We all have a potential. That's our potential, X potential. Maybe we're optimistic, pessimistic, happy or not unhappy, with more potential or less. And Benventi, in her congress that we organized in Oviedo, she told us, giftedness is not an achievement, it's how you come. And it will always be the way they are for the rest of their lives. Not all gifted kids are equal. They might not fit in descriptions or profiles of people who are the same as them. Gifted people, gifted kids have a potential that it's out of the average, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean that they have a problem if they develop in an environment that allows them to be themselves. If we understand that we are born with a potential and with certain characteristics, such as the color of our eyes, our hair, our height, and we respect our differences, there wouldn't be any problem. Or I wouldn't be talking to you about this now. I think that you have a potential that the environment develops or not, or destroys. I also consider that we are almost chained to the knowledge and the ignorance of the ages in which we're living. This ignorance is our environment. The virus of ignorance is around us and distorts the vision that we have. And it also distorts the gifted person because they're living in some hermetic systems that only see that the average is appropriate because there's false stereotypes, false labels, mistaken diagnosis, confusion, disagreement, different theories, terminologies, definitions. Even the gifted person itself has its own false stereotypes because many people believe that being gifted is like being Einstein, just a genius. This ignorance is even worse when we're thinking about false stereotypes when they're not looking at the root of their feelings. They focus their attention exclusively in the characteristics of the gifted person without considering that they live in an hermetic system. They promote bullying, or at least they don't stop it, the same as some parents and some the society in general do. Dr. Berche Cruz, we say diagnose when we should be saying identifying. Gifted people are not people with a condition. He does highlight that their differences is not the same to have an IQ of 115, 135, or 150, 140, or 180. And the worst thing that we can do is to give drugs to a gifted person that has not been labeled accordingly. It's like trapping their mind. There is also polemics, the disagreement on the terminology because there are laws that talks about high capacities and they understand that high talented, high capacities are anyone which are out of the average, those with an superior intelligence, gifted, but also to geniuses. According to how society develops, we're looking for an inclusive society, and then we focus mainly on the average. It's more efficient economically. Sizes for clothing, educational systems, everything is focused around the average. We label anything that is out of that average. We compare kids since they are little, taking the average because when they're 3 years old, they're all together, but their mental age doesn't necessarily be the same. But lately, they're beginning to realize that this is not the best for all. Ignorance happens then when society develops and starts creating programs for the average. And in this intersection, where we've got a gifted person, society, this intersection, when it's not identified or when being gifted is not understood, is when we have this distortion of the person, of the gifted person, in this ignorance. Societies that have been created for the average, that's the best, that's the normal, it's the norm. We label whoever is out of that average. It's not well perceived to be out of the norm unless you have a disorder. If whoever is out of that green area, whoever is in the green area are perfect. They could have problems. They can be hyperactive. Maybe they're a little weird if they're out of this green area. Maybe more sensitive. They're aliens. And that's even worse when you get a diagnosis, ADHD, autistic. This is going to hurt. This is going to damage our gifted kids. Because from the 3-year-old, their age of the 3-year-old, up to then, they are protected by their environment, their families, but then they start feeling that they might not be appropriate. From my experience, I see the huge amount of adjectives, of negative adjectives that they receive. Spoiled. Oh, this kid is spoiled. Everything bothers them. The insist. very suspicious too. But they don't understand that they have a potential that is more developed than others, and it generates that maybe they don't like the feeling of fabrics because if it's not if fabrics are for the average made for 50% percentile and they've got a 90% percentile, they say, I don't want to wear this, I don't like it, I don't feel good with it. Many people actually complain that they always said, oh, you're the clever one, especially with girls. Oh, you're the clever girl. But in a pejorative way, in a negative way, because they have a fast reasoning. Sometimes they understand the reasoning that makes them be perceived as the clever one. You know, so stubborn, persistent, persist. Well, yes, they do, but they're not necessarily stubborn. They just know what they are. What they want. Oh, it's got that constant, so many things. That tree style thinking. They're not. Their thought is not in the line. They don't go as a line. They take branches. Oh, they're so good. Oh, it looks silly because it's being too generous. They question everything and everyone. They question authority. It's a rebel just because they have their own criteria and they question everything. It's not all positive, of course, but we shouldn't be criticizing kids. And they don't question sometimes because they say, well, if this is what they're telling me, well, anyone would suffer from low self-esteem, whether it's in the outside or in the inside. They do feel different. And we have systems that work this way. They're hermetic. The education, the family, the health system, we aim at everyone going along the same path and create it for the average. And whoever goes out of that lane is got a wrong label or a label. We always need to find our identity. We need to accept ourselves. We need to create our psychological structure. We have a potential interacting with environment, and that's the way we develop it along our life. So many gifted kids feel like this. Maybe not in the outside, but they do in the inside. They feel lonely, they feel ugly, they feel sad. What's most important is what is to be gifted. What does it mean? What does it involve? And there's a pattern. There's an ignorant environment where they are growing. They're part of it, but they're also a minority. Thanks to many professionals, mainly those working in teaching, we started seeing that integration is not good for all because some start learning in a different way. And that's how we went from different educational models, different regulations. But in the practical side, it's also being implemented lately to people with high capacities. Integration, inclusion. I think we have the right legal framework. Regulation sets equality in the way of equity, giving each what they need. But we still need to educate all the systems. We still feel that this is a bit of an utopia. And sometimes we misinterpret this. We need to understand this equitative inclusion because it equals equitative equality. Before, most people had to fit in the average, in that dark blue. But now what we need to do is to expand the system to all, so each gets what they need. We shouldn't get everyone to fit in that dark blue slot. We don't need others to. We don't need me to adapt to the system, but the system to accept me. We need education that is not only made for the average. Inclusion starts when you're a teacher. You, as a teacher, you teach your students respect for all because the world belongs to us. Parents, we also need to do this. Health professionals and society in general, we need to respect differences. Different educational models, social models, and European programs have as an objective to promote that everybody have equity and inclusion. But we need to understand what this is. So it's not about getting the same education as everyone. It's equality in the sense of equity. We need to have access to the education we need. It's not one for all, it's having what each of them needs. It would be very good to know what's behind the barrier, whatever it is, whatever the type of people. This cartoon is very clear in the explanation. It seems that for selection has the evaluation to be right, they all have to do the same task. Please all climb the tree. We're all geniuses, but if you judge a fish for its capacity to climb a tree, they will always live thinking that they are useless. And that was Albert Einstein saying. Spanish regulation accepts inclusive education for all students, even those with high capacities. Now I understand what I didn't understand at the time I should. Those to the east of the belt, of the gas belt, they have no problems at all. Wherever they're east or to the right, potential 3, that's what matters least. The name is what matters least. What matters is the interaction with the systems that we have at this time. Is that what's preventing them know themselves better? And comparing with others, we build ourselves and we know ourselves as people. And when they see themselves different from the age of 3, they think there's something wrong with them. And this is if they're lucky and we don't give them the wrong label, or they're not insulted, or they don't suffer bullying along their school life, because they are different to the average and they process faster. They're more vulnerable too, and they're more criticized, and they know. And we need to take this into account. And it happens what they said. This is not it doesn't mean being better or worse, but we need to know it, because it all sinks in. And you believe everything that you're being told because you also feel different. Well, maybe you have to think. I invite you now to think. What would happen if everything was the other way around? What would happen if everything was organized for people with an IQ over 130? What would happen if that would be the majority? Well, it would be a very clear image. Where would we stand? It would be difficult to socialize. They would feel different, that they didn't fit. Self-esteem would be low. They would feel inappropriate. Maybe apparently they could fit. And of course, it would also depend on the environment where they're developing. I think would they feel the same? Well, maybe they would feel less, because they would be in a more empathic and solidary environment. And I talk about this because I'm talking to my experience as a mother, mainly as a mother, but also as a member of the association, where we get so many questions when they are not identified or when they don't understand. Because they also it can also happen that they are in an appropriate environment and they don't have any problems. But when they know themselves, they feel relieved. When you know yourself, you're powerful, because when you accept yourself, you're invincible. This NGO was born to honor our dear Ernol and to transmit what he showed us, what he taught us, and to be able to help other people find themselves. Our main objective is to increase awareness of early identification and the comprehensive development of people, gifted people and with higher capacities. Within this framework, we analyze the forgottenness and the marginalization of the people, of the highly gifted people and gifted people. In all areas of society, in everywhere in the world, but especially this lack of equity affects especially those who are mostly gifted, affecting them at the academic level and at the loving level. We understand that we all have to create positive synergies on giftedness. Every one of us who see it from this point of view, you can see these positive synergies that can be seen in our series of conferences and in all the activities that we organize in the annual association with the speakers that take part voluntarily and wanting to share their knowledge and their experiences with the aim of helping others in a human and honest way. You will be able to see them in our webpage. Thank you for your attention. I hope this has been an interesting talk. And we will now see the experience of Eric and the video dedicated to the mothers. Thank you very much.